Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg, episode 549. Yeah, so we are playing a little Elden Ring here, Convergence, all that stuff. You know how we do. Just finished recording this week another playthrough of Convergence. It was a lot of fun. We did the DLC, and I even beat the final boss of the DLC, which was fun. I also finished recording a playthrough of Fire Emblem 6, which was also pretty fun. And those videos will get uploaded sometime before I die. I'm back to having just a lot of videos on my hard drive waiting to be uploaded. And we've got Claire Obscure coming out very soon now, which is looking pretty good. I don't think there's any reviews out yet. It's looking good, so probably that'll be an LP. I heard about the basic plot for that game, and it's pretty wild, so that's great. Yeah, always a lot of fun stuff. This week, though, on this channel, we had Dawn of War, Dark Crusade, and that's probably going to roll right into Soulstorm, most likely. The videos on Soulstorm. And I uploaded the videos on looking at Axe, Adventure Conqueror King system. And then obviously I have a lot more solo RPG stuff to upload, but we'll piecemeal it out, I guess, a little bit. So I started uploading my videos on Dark Deity. And then depending on the state of Claire Obscure, we'll see what I upload. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to do, if Claire Obscure, if I do it, I tend to like to upload new games when they are out, so they're relevant. Maybe somebody will see it and make a decision about the game based on my video. I don't think that almost ever occurs, but you know. Oh, this is how archers did battle historically, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, yeah, so that's what's going on here. We, on Two Brothers Play, we took a break from Archipelago for a little bit in order to start playing Final Fantasy VI, somewhat randomly. You know, like I said last week, I've been watching a lot of challenge run videos and stuff. And I just thought one that I'd always kind of been interested in doing, well, one that I've done is a single character challenge in Final Fantasy VI. A long time ago when I used to play Final Fantasy VI every year. Tried spicing it up a little bit. So one year I did like this hard mode ROM hack or something, which I actually finished. I was pretty pleased with myself. It wasn't like ball crushingly difficult or anything, but it was definitely harder. So that was interesting. And then another year I did Terra only. Terra single character. And that wasn't really difficult at all. It's probably the easiest single character run you can do, but that's why I started with that. And then I just didn't do any others. But I was like, I'd really like to do it with Gao. Fuck. I'd really like to do Gao only. Because Gao, between Lego and I, was by far the most maligned character. That we just hated his personality. We didn't, when we were kids, we didn't really know anything about his rages, and it just, we just couldn't stand him, so we never used him ever. And I was like, and then when I got a little older and started reading more and more online, it's like, he's apparently a really good character, but I just have this prejudice from my childhood. So I've still never used them, and I was like, the best way to do this and really see how good Gao can be is do Gao only. And so on Wednesday, I was like, hey, I kind of want to do Gao only. We could just play Final Fantasy VI. We don't have to do randomizer, because he's never beaten Final Fantasy VI, ever. And he was on board, so he's doing the Pixel Remaster version, which he bought when it came out. I don't know why. I think the Pixel Remaster is the most dog shit game. Well, no, it is better looking than the original Steam release they had, which was like the mobile version. I will say it's better looking than that, but not by much. So he's playing through that just normally to try to beat the game, and I'm playing the original with Gao only, and it has its ups and downs. Funnily enough, the hardest parts are when I don't have Gao. So right now, I just got to the world of Ruin last night, and I have to get the airship, and I can't get Gao until I get the airship. So fucking trying to do Dullahan with my low-level bullshit party that I wasn't prepared for. Every problem in an RPG can just be solved by grinding, but it's annoying. I don't think this is worth my time. So, yeah, that's going to continue for a little bit. Probably through next Saturday, almost certainly. I can't imagine I'll finish the game on Wednesday, considering I still have to grind. Do a lot of stuff. So, no. But hopefully I finish on Saturday. I don't know if Lego will finish his game on Saturday. But the Pixel Remaster does have 4 times XP, and you can turn off encounters at will and stuff. So we'll see. Yeah, so that's all the things happening on this channel. Over on the Exploring series, I did Acrophobia, where gravity just flips for everybody and it's not pleasant. And then this week I worked on Alethophobia, which is very different. It's a very different SCP. It's about basically this set of 4 stone heads that these researchers go to investigate that apparently can, like, change perception or something, and it gets pretty trippy, to say the least. It gets very trippy. It's a very unique article. A little tricky to actually convey in audio form, because the article has a unique kind of presentation. But I did the best I could, and I think it's somewhat coherent, so, yeah. get hit by his fucking ballista. Dodge. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good SCP. I like it. I don't know how it's gonna go over, especially because I didn't put any images in the video. Really, I had no idea what to use. It's a unique SCP. Usually, I just resort to like fractal images or something, but this time nowadays I resort to just using the audio waveform, which some people seem to like. Every time I try to put it in, though, I encounter all sorts of technical difficulties. My computer just doesn't like doing it. Doesn't like After Effects, doesn't like me using it. I mean, it always gets done, but it's always a headache. And my computer, my work computer, is getting on a little bit in age. I mean, I don't do anything that demanding on it, but except when I try to do waveforms. But I don't want to ever replace anything with that computer because it's set up. I don't want to use the word perfectly, but it's set up exactly how I would kind of want it for now. For recording the audio and everything. Because a while back I had a fan reach out to give me all these like plugins and the settings for the plugins to make my audio sound good. And he did a great job. I mean, just over like email, you know, helping me out. Because it does sound a lot better than it used to. But now it's like, I don't know if I like get a new computer or anything like that, if I would be able to redo everything. So. Hey T2AV. That's going pretty well. So yeah, I mean, eventually the computer will, die. That happens to computers. Eventually bad things will occur, but I'll just have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Really, it's just like when I take a hiatus or something like in January, I should just purposefully reset things up or, you know, upgrade something. But, you know, who wants to ever do that? Yeah, so Alethophobia, it's another like 50-minute something, or like 50, I think it's 57 minutes. It's longer than I wanted it to be. But anytime I mention on the Patreon polls that an article is like shorter, you know, then it never gets voted on because nobody wants a short video. I mean, some people do, but they're not on my Patreon apparently. But hopefully someday we get a short video for a little bit of a break. Ah. But yeah, it is what it is. That's the job, so it's all good. Yeah, I guess I don't have much else to say about that. So in lieu of anything else, I suppose I'll move on to talking about RPGs. It's a bit of an odd session because for one, we had to play at my parents' house because my mom broke her ankle, like I said, and so that was different. Not really a big deal. It's fine. But then our third player was like 40 minutes late, so that was awesome. You know, classic scheduling issues. And then our fourth player was like 2 hours late or something like that. I mean, we knew that was going to happen, but it was still just like we weren't sure. I think that they didn't want to do anything big. They didn't want to do anything really stressful, dangerous, impactful with just the three of them. They wanted to wait for the fourth. So they're like, okay, well, let's just go hunting or something. And we'll just mill about and go hunting. Like, okay, I mean, the system allows for that. I mean, I don't want to say it encourages it or anything, but it allows for it. You're not quick enough, bro. Oh, there he was. There you go, much better. Dance, kitty. So they started out in the big city, or the relative big city, and they did some shopping, some minor shopping. I talked to my mom about my solo stuff, so I talked to her about like that I recently did some like butchering, you know, I started butchering some animals and I was learning all about that. And she's like, okay, we need to buy like butchering tools from the shop so that we can butcher animals that we find. So they did. They bought some other miscellaneous stuff, and they set out from the city. And I was using the OSC Wilderness Encounter tables previously. But the thing is, those Wilderness Encounter tables are, like, kind of ridiculous, and they're very general. Very general. Like, just any sort of forest. It's just forest, that's the forest table. You roll forest table, done. And you can encounter anything from, you know, goats to a basilisk, and who knows? So I now have started to use axe tables for wilderness, which are much more refined, much better. And it's because it's like they're in a civilized area. They're on a civilized road. I said at the start of the whole campaign that the road to Ilmire from the big city is well treaded, you know, by merchants and travelers, because Ilmire is meant to be sort of like this little pit stop between two larger trading cities. So the road sees quite a bit of traffic. And so for them to just suddenly be encountering basilisks at the woods next to the road, or giant hawks swooping down and attacking, it's just like, this is a very feral setting that I have created here. Whereas axe tables allow for much more sensible results. Such as, you're going to encounter mainly like merchants, commoners, farmers, goats, you know, wild horses, things like that. And then you might encounter brigands or bandits. And there is a slim chance of encountering like a werewolf or something, but by and large, it's going to just be commoners. So yeah, it made way more sense, and it's like, if you really want to be finding giant hawks and basilisks and wolves and things to hunt, it's like you gotta go into the forests and stuff, or into the badlands. You gotta go into locations away from commonly treaded roads between trading cities. It all makes more sense. So, yeah, they didn't encounter much on the road to Ilmire, and then they're like, okay, they're definitely steering clear of Ilmire. They basically never want to set foot in that place again, which is fine. I spooked them so much, they don't even want to set foot in there. But they kind of have to if they want to actually solve the problem. They know for a fact that there's like a cult headquarters in the town, so they're going to have to go there eventually. I think their sort of plan is to just amass, like, large amounts of allies and then storm the city or something. I don't know. I don't know if they have a plan, but they're steering clear of Ilmire. I thought that they might want to go back to the bandit encampment to clear it out and get all the rest of the treasure, but either they forgot or they... Like I said, they got caught up in just, like, wanting to hunt stuff because they wanted to wait for their fourth player. So they went to another hex nearby Ilmire to just like, hey, we're going to go into the forest and we're going to start hunting. Like, okay, I mean, I'm suitably prepared for such things. Evils of Ilmire has random encounter tables for everything. I have axe rules for hunting. You know, like, this is not a big deal at all. So they march out there, but they don't... that hex they go into specifically is actually a logger's camp. So there isn't much wildlife there to be hunted because it's all being logged down. So they go up to the loggers' sort of lodge, because they're like... I told them, you know, a while back that every hex has something to it, you know, something to interact with, some sort of quest or dungeon or something. So everything has something to it. So they sort of got a little gamey there, and that's good. I mean, that's fine. It's a game. It's not the end of the world. They're like, okay, well, let's go talk to the loggers and see if they need any help with anything. Like, that's great. I mean, that's better than mindlessly hunting in the wilderness, I think. And so they meet with this big, just mountain of a man, 7 feet tall, dick-swinging logger man. I said that he looks like the Chad meme guy, basically, you know, but a lumberjack. And this guy is apparently, like, decades and decades old, even though he doesn't look it, because he's got a magical axe that keeps him immortal and eternally young, as long as he doesn't leave this forest or this clearing or something like that. And so the loggers have been getting raided recently, here and there, by the fishmen from the nearby lake. And they are not combatants, they're not adventurers, and obviously it's not like Ilmire is in a really good state to form a militia to go against the fish folk. So, they're just kind of left here to die, basically. I mean, they could flee, but it's sort of their livelihood. And I guess eventually they would flee, but obviously Rigdorf can't leave without dying. So, you know, tricky situation. So, he's glad that they come in asking if they need any help with anything, because he's like, well, of course, the fishmen. We need to deal with the fishmen. They live in the lake. They raid us. And they ask a bunch of questions, and they try to get as much info out of them as possible, but there's not much to tell, you know. They're fucking fishmen that raid them. And they, like, steal their food and sometimes take people and stuff. And Rigdorf promises them if they completely stop the attacks from occurring, he promises them 1,000 gold pieces, which for them is a pretty nice sum as a reward. I mean, you know the fishmen have treasure and stuff. And he promises them his magical axe, because he's finally ready to let it go and let his life end, as long as his men are safe. So, they, of course, agree to help out. More than happy to help out. And they start wandering over towards the lake. And they get to the lake and they find, like, fishermen there, you know? Like, out on the lake just fishing, even though there's apparently horrible, evil fishmen around. And they also heard that there's a giant sturgeon, giant fish, that lives at the bottom of the lake and comes out once a month to feed. So they're very curious about this giant fish that lives down there. Ow. So, they set up camp and they start hanging about, and a couple of them are just sitting there at camp waiting to see if they see any evidence of fishmen and what's going on with the fishmen. And the other two, the ones with ranged weapons, they go out to go hunting. And while they're hunting, I roll for, you know, see if they get any random encounters. And they do. They encounter a giant crocodile, specifically a caiman. And so this crocodile charges out at them, and they immediately run up a tree. And I can't really fault them. It seems like a pretty good plan. We kind of had a discussion about if crocodiles can climb trees. But then it's like, it's 12 feet long. I don't know. I don't know enough about crocodiles to make all these assessments as a DM. So I kind of just gave it to him. And I figured the crocodile just, like, went back to the water. But as it was running back towards the water, my aunt pulled out her big gun and shot its leg off, killing it in one shot. So they were pretty pleased with that. And they wanted to... So, you know, I'm using axe rules for, like, everything. Except to actually play axe. But... You know, I went into this thing about how all sorts of creatures have, like, potentially magical ingredients that they can harvest. And they can use to make magical items, or they can sell them for profit, and so on and so forth. And so they did some rolls and figured out that this thing's skull could be used as a magical reagent for, like, swimming. You know, or something, any sort of swimming or maybe water-related stuff. An axe specifically says for the spell swimming, which just makes you swim faster. But I know that they're going to be struggling with water breathing to get down there under the lake. So it's like, if they wanted to use it for water breathing, that's fine. So they tried to harvest the skull, but they botched it, so they nicked it too much and kind of wrecked it. And then they're like, screw it, you know, we're just gonna drag this thing back to camp. And they do. Like 500 pounds, but they drag it back to camp. And I did another random encounter roll while they're dragging it back, but it was nothing. And then they started just butchering it. And so we went into the whole discussion of how long it takes to butcher it. And thankfully, again, axe provides. And basically it was like 16.3 man-hours to butcher this thing completely. And it was going to provide, I think, like 130 pounds of meat. And they didn't want to spend 16 hours because they only bought one butchering kit, and I think they only have one person that can butcher. And I told them before they could hire somebody to come along and just do their butchering for them. But they didn't want to pay them for that. It wouldn't even be that expensive. I mean, a butcher's not making 100 gold a month or something. But, you know, they're not ready to have an entourage with them, I guess. So they're like, okay, you know, we just want to... I think Lego said specifically that he wanted 28 rations. He wanted the 4 of them to all have 7 more rations. And so I had to calculate exactly how much time that would take based on the overall number. Which wasn't too bad. Because 28 rations is basically 40 pounds of food, give or take. Which was close to a third of the overall result. So basically, like I said, like 5 hours or so of butchering will get you that. Now, that's technically just raw meat. There's not the... So Axe actually didn't have rules for like food preservation or cooking or anything, which I was very surprised by. I think there's a supplement or something, but yeah, I was pretty surprised. So I just went back to Cataclysm, of course, where you can just build a smoking rack and smoke your meat overnight. And I was like, okay, I mean, they have people on watch anyways, so someone can just mind the smoking rack while they're watching. Which probably affects your perception a little bit. But yeah, I didn't want to make a huge deal about food preservation. And they were pleased enough with the result. So they got, basically everyone got another week worth of food out of the crocodile. And I gave them, I think, all an XP for the... I think I said, for interacting with the survival mechanics. You know, we want to encourage that sort of stuff. Then the next day, they continued to do more hunting. And they didn't get any random encounters, so they just got, like, a deer or something. And I think this one they just skinned and, like, ate that night as fresh food. And so I had to figure out... They wanted to know how much the deer pelt is worth. Again, Axe has very handy formulas for determining exactly that. And based on my calculation, the deer pelt costs, or valued around 4 silver, which seems reasonable. I mean, hunters are not rolling in gold from their deer pelts. But it does say specifically that fur pelts are worth quite a bit more. And the formula was a bit different and kind of more vague. And then I guess I ruled that it wasn't a fur pelt, but then later when I was laying in bed, I was like, wait a minute, is deer fur or is deer hair? I still am not sure, because you say like horse hair, you don't say horse fur. I don't think that it's referred to as fur. Deer coats are more accurately described as having hair rather than fur. Yeah, the reason that fur is more valued is due to the warmth and stuff. and I don't think deer is really valued for that. I'm kind of out of my element here, but I ruled that it wasn't fur, and everyone was fine with it, so I guess it was fine. Compared to, like, beavers or something like that, you know? Foxes, that's a bit warmer. So, yeah. Axe has just a lot of info. And it's very fun. It's been very fun over the months and weeks and stuff, delving further into it through my solo game and DMing and just reading stuff. Creating a very different kind of game than I ever played back in the day. We certainly never cared about the value of deer pelts when I used to play. And this is like the last group that I would really have expected to be interested in hunting, skinning a deer, and then asking about its value. But there they were, you know. They weren't too impressed with the value of the deer. Because they had wanted to skin the giant crocodile, because that would be worth a lot more. But that is a very time-consuming process. You know, it's 12 feet long. There's only one person that can skin it. And they had already butchered it. And you can't skin it after you butcher it. So... And it's a bummer because the axe rules specifically say that the pelt or skin is ruined on a creature unless you kill it with like one shot, one attack, or at least half the damage was done with like cold or electricity or something other than just piercing, slashing, bludgeoning damage. So they actually did kill that thing in one shot. It did have a good set of skin on it. Oh, well. While they were hunting that deer, though, the two back at camp, they dumped the giant crocodile carcass into the lake. And then they got attacked by 5 sturges. Giant blood-sucking mosquitoes. And that was potentially a fairly risky combat, but I was basically rolling poorly the entire night, which makes them all very happy. Because if I roll well, they're just miserable. But yeah, I rolled like shit. And Lego, you know, he was in his plate mail. It was a sweltering day. The weather determined it was sweltering that day. So he actually had part of his armor off. He took his greaves off or whatever. But yeah, he was still mostly in plate armor. And he was just tanking the sturges coming at him. And he's just... was swinging his flail and he smashed him out of the sky, and then he did a major exploit to just like cleave through 2 more of them, and it went pretty well. It was a pretty easy combat for them. And then they set about plucking the feathers off the sturges. Normally I would never think of sturges having feathers, but I'm using, of course, the Axe Monster Manual, and they have their sturges with feathers. And so they plucked feathers. Each sturge has 6d10 feathers on them, so they plucked a total of 179 feathers. And that was valued, I think, at like 271 silver pieces. Something like that. So a pretty solid monetary value out of killing those sturges there. They were pleased with that. The sturges had other magical components, but my aunt completely botched her lore roll to figure out what they were. So they just took the feathers because I figured they could see there's value in there. They're not magical or anything. They're just nice feathers. For some rich guy's blank pillow or something like that. It was at that point, you know, they were really like, we've been here now for a while. We haven't seen any fishmen. And I decided I couldn't just keep waiting for a random encounter roll. like a 2 in 6 chance to get a random encounter, and then like a 1d8 chance that they might see fishmen come out of the lake. So I was like, okay, you know, I'm gonna break away from the OSR a little bit. I mean, you know, you don't have to, not everything has to be random. And so they just, that night while on watch, you know, they saw some figures moving out of the lake. And so they immediately woke everybody up, and they all learned their lesson from the basilisk encounter. They weren't dumb this time. So they hightailed it away from the camp. And watched as the fish folk approached their camp and started rummaging around through their tents and stuff. And they were really sitting there, and they were in the woods watching and just kind of discussing their plan of attack, or what should they do with these fish folk, you know, what are they, you know. And they started talking about, well, maybe these guys are like intelligent or something, you know, maybe we can negotiate with them and talk to them and blah, blah, blah. But they kind of overheard them talking in this like guttural fish voice, you know, amongst each other in a different language. So they're like, I don't know. They have this potion they got from the druid that lets them talk to anything for an hour, which they're supposed to use with the froglings. But they thought, well, we could use it with the fish. I don't know. They kind of went back and forth, and then my aunt eventually was like, I'm gonna throw my fume flask full of sleep gas right in the middle of the camp. And I'm like, okay, you know, it happens. And the slumber spell, they all got a Constitution, I think, saving throw. Strength or con, I don't even remember now. They all failed. All 5 of them failed. So all of them just dropped down. Encounter over. I gave her an XP for finally using her fume flask. That was a hallmark moment. And, you know, successfully ending an entire encounter with one action. That's pretty good. So she got an XP for that. They tied up all the fish folk, and they didn't want to talk to them. They decided the next morning to just take the fish folk away and maybe go back to, like, they wanted to get away from the lake, basically. They thought maybe taking them back to the loggers or something. They weren't sure yet, but they wanted to just get away from the lake. I was like, okay, well, you know, while you're walking these captives through the forest, you know, away from the lake, you definitely notice you're being followed. And they figured out pretty quickly they were being followed by a big group of fish folk who are obviously trying to go after their friends that went missing. And they were really unsure about what to do with these fish folk that were following them, and they decided to just ignore them. I don't know what their plan was or what they thought was going to happen. And I think some of them did say, you know, we're going to get attacked. They're going to attack us. But then the others were like, no, we'll just keep going. Sure enough, they got attacked. So that started the first real combat of the whole session. It was the 4 of them versus 8 fish folk. I think Lego started by immediately executing their 5 prisoners, which is what kicked off the combat. Like, they all just suddenly stopped, and Lego just takes out a dagger and just slices their throat, you know, and he just starts cutting in. Oh, yeah, very, very paladin-like of you. Yes, excellent. Yeah, so it was 4 of them versus 8 fish folk. 6 of them with spears, 2 of them with bow and arrow. One of them could have mentioned, I suppose, as to why the fishmen would have bow and arrows. Where are they training with their bow and arrows? I think I mentioned at some point that the fish folk they tend to live in underwater locations, but they can breathe air, and their homes will often have like air pockets inside their caverns and stuff. But anyways, yeah, the combat went pretty well, mostly because I rolled like absolute dog shit. I rolled above a 10 like once or twice, maybe. It was very bad for me. But they were happy, and they put them all to the sword, and they got down to like the last. Well, no, they didn't kill them all. They killed a few. They killed, I think, 4 of them, and then I said that the last 4 were going to flee. And so a few of them got some opportunity attacks, and 2 of them missed. So 3 of them got away. And then there was the last one, and my mom was up, and she's the fighter. She has the best chance of hitting and everything. So she was probably going to kill this thing as it ran away. And Lego had asked about non-lethal attacks, if they can like knock him out or something. I'm like, yeah, you sure can. It's a -2 on your roll, but you can knock him out. And he's like, okay, and he had the other 2 try to knock him out, and they said okay, and they failed their rolls. So he's like, okay, now do a knockout. And my mom's just like, I'm gonna kill him. She didn't give a shit, and she rolled very well, and she just cut his head off, and that was it. Lego was very upset. Lego gets upset when none of the group listens to him, even though he's not really that good at RPGs or anything, but he's the most vocal. He's that kind of player. And it's already kind of been getting on my aunt's nerves that basically anything she says gets like shot down by Lego. And so here, he got very upset that our mom didn't listen to him. Blah, blah, blah. Because they wanted him captive. He wanted them captive. I'm not quite sure why, unless they were going to use the potion, but maybe he wanted to use the potion. I think he had some plan of going to the loggers with all these corpses or something, and lying to them basically, and telling them that the situation is resolved. There's no more attacks. And I was like, wow, it's really not paladin. So Lego wants to be a chivalric, lawful paladin when it suits him, pretty much. And not any other time. So yeah. But that was pretty much how we ended the session. They did butcher the fish folk, which is sort of questionable. They're well aware at this point that these are like sapient creatures. And they also learned a little bit that these are not normal fish folk. My aunt is playing the most intelligent character, the one with all the lore skills. So she's doing all these rolls to see what she knows about these creatures and stuff. And so yeah, I'm like, you know that these are not normal fish folk. She didn't really roll well enough to understand why, other than just they're different. Something about their physiology is a little different to what she knows about fishmen. But they did notice this sort of like brand, or almost like a scar almost, on all of their like underarms. This isn't in the original module, but I need to lay things out a little thicker for them. Because in the module, all these fish folk were originally, centuries ago, humans from Ilmire that were actually cursed by this kind of evil entity. Sort of the big bad of the whole campaign. Sort of. This basically just evil beholder that likes to experiment on stuff. And so these now are all like descendants that are all similarly cursed in the same way. So I wanted to sort of dangle a little bit of a plot hook that, you know, these are not just things that you could slaughter. I mean, you can just slaughter them, but there might be something more to them that could be investigated. But they still, you know, killed them all. But yeah, so they butchered them all because, you know, there's gonna be, there was like an ingredient in there that could be used for water breathing. Like, their gills, basically. So they harvested, like, 7 of their gills. Now, if I'm actually going to use axe rules for them wanting to make a potion of water breathing using these gills, they're going to need to kill a lot more fishmen. Because the rules for potion creating or magic item creating there are pretty strict as far as the costs involved. To make even a little potion of a level 1 spell, you need 500 gold worth of magical components. And that's a lot at this stage. So I don't know if I'm just going to fudge the rules to make things easier for them, or I'm not sure. As far as I understand the rules, at least. I might need to go over them some more, but yeah, it's not easy for low-level characters to make magic items. And in fact, in Axe, it's practically impossible for them to even do so. They'd have to hire somebody. Unless you have the alchemist proficiency, then I think you can make potions. But again, the costs involved are extortionate. Anyways, so that's where we ended, and I don't know what they'll get up to next session. They've kind of abandoned the mantis men and the froglings that they were looking into, and now they're on the fish folk. But the fish folk's trickier because you got to get underwater into these underwater caverns. You really need some method of breathing underwater. I'll have to comb through the book a bit more to see if there's like some other item that they could maybe get, or some other clue that they could use. I don't know. But the Mantis Men is definitely a bit more straightforward of just, here's Mantis Men, they want to kill you, you kill them. We'll see. Alright, I think that's enough jibber-jabbing for today. So, more Dawn of War. More Dark Deity this week. More Final Fantasy VI with Two Brothers Play. And then on the Exploring series, it will be Alethophobia. And I think that'll do it. Alright, anyways. For now, my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. And I'll see you fine folks next week.